Oh, shoot. You weren't supposed to see that. Okay, well, anyways, I lied. You were supposed to see that. Anyways, here's my presentation. Come on. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm disabled. Oh, hang on. There's not really a fun lead up for that. I was trying to think of one, which is why I did all of that, but the summer that I was 15, I started realizing that I had mild pain when I was texting my friends, which I did basically all the time. And later, I realized I was having more distinct pain when I was drawing, which was another thing I did basically all the time, like with 0 breaks. So, in light of this, I did what any responsible 15-year-old would do. I did both of those things anyway, more. And now this might surprise you, but that actually didn't help. In fact, it made the pain get worse. I'm almost 18 now, and I still get that same pain. It's not constant. Usually I'll just have a dull pain if I write, type, draw, really do anything with my wrist for too long, but sometimes after serious usage, or although maybe I'm just not observant enough, literally no reason, I will be in consistent, awful pain, possibly for the next few hours, or even just get random shooting pain if life really has it out for me that day. And it makes a lot of tasks that people take for granted impossible to do painlessly. On a bad day, I can have trouble eating cereal, opening car doors. Heck, there was one time where I couldn't even turn off my shower because it was too painful for me to turn the knob. And I'm sure you can imagine that that's actually really fun to deal with. I'm sure you can also imagine how fun it would be to do schoolwork under these circumstances. What do you mean convergent topic time? I can't show them the Hydra, you have to do that. Okay, so to help illustrate how it feels to navigate life, well, specifically school, while disabled, I drew this Hydra. The heads are anxiety, ADHD, and depression, which are all real disabilities I checked. Basically, having to deal with these sometimes feels like you're running from a giant Hydra. You know, maybe not all of the heads are always after you, or maybe it's asleep, but it's always, well, there. I can have trouble paying attention in class if I don't have something to doodle on or fidget with at the same time. I turn in a lot of assignments late because I forget to do them, or I literally cannot get myself to do them no matter how much I want to. And I can frequently forget school materials or anything else I might need to succeed in school. I actually remember a time in middle school when I was doing a math assignment that actually made me start to cry, because even though I could understand it perfectly, whenever I tried to write things down, I would just space out before I could get a single number in. It was basically like walking a short distance between 2 flagpoles in fog so thick I couldn't see my own nose. I'm a smart kid and I don't really have trouble understanding anything I'm taught, but because of my disabilities, I already had a bit of trouble dealing with certain parts of school, and then they decided to throw in this whole new disability called like repetitive strain injury or something. And it was basically like taping a tiger to the Hydra that could breathe fire. So I had to deal with that too, and it kind of made it way harder to actually do school without, So having to deal with all of this kind of made me think, like, school is supposed to be equal for everyone, right? Like, the Education for All Handicapped Children Act was supposed to guarantee every child in public school gets a free and appropriate education regardless of disabled status. And although I've only gone to private schools, everyone I've gone to has touted how dedicated it is to diversity and inclusion. Yet even so, I and many other disabled people I've talked to have kind of agreed that schools aren't really giving them a fair chance. And why is that? Well, yeah, I was just getting there. Something I've noticed is that there is a guy that school is designed for, the type of guy who is normal, presumably neurotypical and able-bodied, who can do everything that is asked of them in the way that it is asked of them. How often is it that you get the choice of how to do a certain assignment, or just to prove that you have the knowledge a class requires? Or just think about some of the ways that school works. Here, as a boarding student, if someone is below a certain grade, they have to keep their door open. And yeah, this probably helps a lot of people study, because I mean, imagine like having someone like watch you to make sure you're on track kind of sounds helpful, right? But there are a lot of people who can't study that way, either because their anxiety makes them freak out if they feel like they're being watched, or because Their autism doesn't let them focus if there's a certain level of outside noise, and it actually hinders their ability to study because the system wasn't designed for the few people who can't deal with that rule, it's designed for the guy. And presumably, it's helpful for the guy. Or rules are just designed a certain way because it's easiest. Yeah, usually every kid in a class has to take a test in the same room, just because it would be such a hassle to get an individual room for each kid. And it usually doesn't have a big effect on the guy, so it's fine. For most people. And it's often said that because everyone gets the same treatment, you know, they have to do the same things in the same way, that it's fair, right? Because it's equal. No one is being disadvantaged on purpose. But not everyone is the guy. And this is where the problems start. Because when everyone is assumed to be normal, to be the guy, people who aren't the guy start to be othered. My friend once asked, thanks guys. My friend once asked my US government teacher for some accommodations for her autism. Mostly she needed to be provided class notes for lectures because the way her brain was wired allowed her to understand everything that was being taught to her, but not to write things down at the same time. My teacher looked at her and straight up said, "But you just don't seem autistic." Aw. Yeah. That friend ended up having to get tons of people involved, from higher-ups at the school to her own doctor, just because this teacher would genuinely not believe that she was autistic. And she's gotten this from other people, too, that she's too articulate or so good at talking to people or not a screeching 3-year-old boy, so how could she possibly be autistic? If everyone is assumed to be normal, as long as they vaguely fit the guy shape, they don't take a lot of disabled people into account because, get this, you can't always tell that someone is disabled just from looking at them. So people, only seeing the guy, can only get their knowledge of what a disability is from extreme cases or from what they vaguely heard about it from another source. And I've gotten stuff like this too when I was trying to get my ADHD diagnosis so I could get treatment for it. When I told my parents I was struggling with the exact symptoms of ADHD, they told me, "But you're so smart." And I mean, I'm sure they didn't really mean it, but it comes, well, they meant that I'm smart, but I'm sure they probably didn't mean the implication that all people with ADHD are stupid, and because I'm not stupid, I couldn't have ADHD. And like, I could always do what the guy could do, so I am the guy. Why am I asking for help now? And yeah, these are pretty drastic examples, but it doesn't even have to be that explicit. There are a lot of activities that I need to be excused from because of my injured wrist, and I've noticed that when I ask to be excused from certain things, when I ask while I'm wearing my wrist braces, I'll more often be instantly believed and then excused. And if I am asking while I'm not wearing my wrist braces, again, for almost the same task, I will be more likely to get stuff like, "Are you sure you can't do this?" Or, you know, "It's not really going to be that difficult, it's not going to be that straining, it's fine," or, "Really?" People, unless given significant evidence to the contrary, often expect a given person to be the guy. Because I was not visibly, explicitly showing that I was dealing with a wrist injury, I was less likely to receive help from it. Just like a lot of disabled people who have to prove they're enough of a non-guy to deserve accommodations. Some people also take this guy assumption to a dangerous extreme, that being, if everyone is the guy, then people who claim to be disabled are just guys trying to cheat the system. That's how we get the idea that we can't give disabled people accommodations because then people will fake disabilities to get benefits, which, come on. That's like telling a disabled person, "Hey, we can't help you because we made up this evil guy in our head and we don't like them, so we're going to screw you over because of how much we hate that other guy who may or may not exist." Or finding someone who just got found like not guilty in court and being like, "Hey, so some people who are found not guilty actually are guilty, so we're going to put you in jail anyway because of those other people." But even with all of that, there's actually an issue beyond denying disabled people their accommodations that can be a lot harder to track, and it's disabled people not even asking for accommodations in the first place, which is really more common than a lot of people might think, because, guys, asking for help is hard. And that's kind of weird, right? Like, you think it's harder to do something difficult without help than it would be to just get help and do it easily, but like, for some reason, whenever I'm considering asking for a disability accommodation, if, like, I need it, I will think that, like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. I don't really need it, even if it's something my own doctor recommends. And I'll also do this for like coping mechanisms that like I don't need to ask anyone for help for. Like for a long time, I didn't want to use this like disability or this dictation software that is so helpful to me now, because I thought, well, I mean, I could probably just type everything normally. I don't have that serious of a wrist injury, or like, I don't need to set a phone alarm to remember this thing. I'm not that scatterbrained, or, you know, I don't need to ask for an extension for this thing my ADHD wouldn't let me work on. I'm totally capable of typing through the whole night and getting it done normally, which actually hurt my overused wrists even more, which is really cool. And because of that, I started to wonder why I was so opposed to asking for help, why I had trouble using coping mechanisms that I and other people recommended to me, why I kept saying I wasn't that disabled, why I kept trying to draw a line between me and some kind of imaginary disabled person who does get accommodations. And I started to realize that the reason I kept trying to force myself to do things the normal way was because of all these things I've heard about other disabled people. People with physical injuries are helpless and incapable of doing anything on their own, and because I could do some things on my own, even if it hurt, it meant I didn't really need accommodations. People with ADHD are stupid and lazy, and I don't want to be those things, so I don't need help because I don't seriously suffer from ADHD. I kept wanting to be the guy, either because all my life I've been told that I am that guy, or because everything that isn't that guy is weird, strange, not normal, bad. I could bend and break to fit the mold of normal, even if it hurt, even if it made my wrists and mental health worse in the long run. I could do that, so shouldn't I? And that's the sort of pressure that we put people under when we design a system for the one guy, assume everyone is that guy, and then stigmatize everything outside of that guy. People will destroy themselves trying to fit that mold. So what are we supposed to do about that? I think a good first step would be just to destigmatize being neurodivergent or physically disabled. Just allowing people to talk about it and just keep an open mind about what a certain disability looks like. Or just re-examining some rules or expectations for people that are considered to be universal, just to see if they really need to be. I want to leave you guys with a quote that Albert Einstein never actually said. Every person is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it's stupid. And I also want to talk a little more about what's fair in education if everyone is treated equally. A swordfish's top speed is much faster than a human's, and in a race it would always win, unless you make them both race on land. And you know, maybe no one is the guy. Maybe everyone is their own type of creature, and if we all help each other advocate for themselves to get the help that we all need to succeed, then we can have a beautiful animal kingdom. And I think that that would be pretty cool. Thank you.